Hello and welcome to Generation 16, the series that showcases the games of Sega's Mega Drive. I'm your host, Greg Seward. In this episode, we'll see the system's first online game, the return of one of the Mega Drive's most prolific third-party publishers, Sega's Tetris Killer, and a movie game done right. Let's get started. Episode 9 welcomes another new third-party publisher to the Mega Drive fold. Sunsoft was a name a lot of North American gamers recognized by 1990, mostly due to high-quality licensed games like Fester's Quest, Gremlins 2, and of course, Batman. Remember that one, it'll be important in an upcoming episode. Sunsoft also gained a few fans with its original games like Blaster Master and Return to Silius. In Japan, though, Sunsoft's reputation wasn't as great. It released a lot of mediocre games on the Famicom. The first Sunsoft game for the Mega Drive is the first in its Tel Tel series, Tel Tel Mahjong. This is a simple mahjong simulator with an important feature, the ability to play online. If the player had Sega's Mega Modem attached to the back of their Mega Drive, they could dial up a friend and play across a network at a blazing fast 2400 bits per second. What's odd is that Tel Tel Mahjong was released a good 5 months before the Mega Modem, which came out in November of 1990. And when you take away the online play, Tel Tel Mahjong seems like a really bare-bones program. And unfortunately, due to the nature of the game, once you've removed online play, you've lost any sort of multiplayer ability whatsoever. All you can do is take on 3 AI opponents. I guess it's worth noting, though, that Tel Tel Mahjong was the only pure Mahjong title for the Mega Drive thus far. The only other representation of the game was the digital novel-style Mahjong Cop Ryu, which we covered back in episode 5. Technosoft is back with its third Mega Drive game, the most of any third-party publisher up to this point. Thunder Force 3 is the sequel to their first Mega Drive game, but unlike its predecessor, which was a port of an older PC game, Thunder Force 3 is a Mega Drive original. That's not the only thing that's new this time around, though. Gone are the free-roaming overhead bits that made up the lion's share of the gameplay in Thunder Force 2. This game is an entirely horizontal scrolling affair, and it's definitely for the better. Despite all of the levels scrolling mostly from left to right now, it's truly impressive how much personality has been injected into each world. Whether you're screaming along at breakneck speeds through the fiery caverns of Gorgon or ducking behind the twisted foliage that chokes the jungle planet of Hydra, the environments are overflowing with personality. On the ice world of Ellis, you have to navigate the jagged, icy slopes of a frozen mountain before flying straight up the side of a cliff to face the boss. In Siren, you plunge into the watery depths to take on wave upon wave of enemies while air bubbles wreak havoc on your ship's controls. And at the end of every level, a screen-filling boss. Personally, I think that Thunder Force 3 is the best-looking shooter on the system up to this point. It's easy to see that it was built to take advantage of the Mega Drive hardware. Some of the levels, Fireworld Gorgon in particular, really put the system through its paces. And the soundtrack consists of the same high-quality, high-energy tunes we've come to expect from Technosoft based on previous games Thunder Force 2 and Herzog's Eye. Thunder Force 3 also marks another first for a Mega Drive game. As far as I know, this is the first title created specifically for the Mega Drive that was eventually ported to Nintendo's Super Famicom. Sega and Technosoft partnered to port the game to arcades under the name Thunder Force AC. Toshiba EMI then ported the arcade version to the Super Famicom in 1991 under the name Thunder Spirits. It was published by a company called Sega. Time for another Toplon shooter. The last time we saw a game from them was Truxton back in December 1989. Twin Hawk is pretty unique in that the entirety of the enemy force is made up of ground-based vehicles like jeeps and tanks. The backstory is that the rebel army you're attacking has no air force, which means you're counterattacking with the one thing they can't match. This means you never have to worry about colliding with an enemy, only their bullets. And the pace is quite slow. I guess it's because the land-based forces are at a bit of a speed disadvantage otherwise. Also, the levels go on forever. In fact, I don't think I ever saw a distinct end or beginning to a level after I started the game. But the really cool thing about Twin Hawk is the quote-unquote smart bomb. Rather than dropping some sort of all-incinerating, screen-clearing firestorm, pressing the secondary fire button brings up a squadron of allied planes. These guys will fly in formation until they get shot down, firing in a steady rhythm. When they do get shot down, if they happen to hit an enemy when they hit the ground, they'll take that poor soul along with them. Or, if you're feeling particularly desperate, you can hit that secondary fire button one more time, and any surviving squad mates will target the nearest enemy in a kamikaze attack. Unfortunately, this nifty little shooter didn't make its way to North America, which is a shame considering how it would have seemed so different to anything else on the market. It was, however, one of the earliest Mega Drive games to see store shelves in Europe, which saw scattered, disorganized Mega Drive system launches starting around March 1990. In fact, this makes Twin Hawk unique in another way. The first Japanese Mega Drive game to hit Europe without some sort of preceding US release. This episode of Generation 16 is just overflowing with firsts. Here we have the first ever Mega Drive game that originated in North America. Remember Tetris? We previously discussed the game and its ridiculous journey from Russian PC shareware to arcades and home consoles around the world. Right around the time Tetris was becoming a phenomenon, a software engineer at Hewlett-Packard was busy coming up with a puzzle game of his own. Jay Geertsen's columns shared a lot of similarities to Tetris. Colored gems fall to the bottom of a well, challenging the player to make continuous matches in order to clear them out and make room for more. Columns was originally written for the little-known X Windows system in 1989, but was pretty quickly ported to DOS, Mac, and Windows 3 and the Atari ST. Whereas Sega was unable to publish Tetris on any of its home consoles, it needed its own puzzle game to fill out the Mega Drive library. In 1990, Sega licensed Columns from Geertsen and got to work releasing it on every bit of hardware they could. The Mega Drive version is loosely based on the arcade version Sega released earlier in 1990. Gameplay is almost as simple as Tetris, but just complex enough that I'd say Columns is a bit more difficult to master early on. Three gem columns fall from the top of the screen at ever-increasing speeds. Unlike Tetris, where the pieces can be rotated to fit into the well below, the player is limited to simply cycling the three gems in each column until they hit the bottom. The idea is to match up three or more similar colors when the columns land. course, learning how to set up multiple strings of matches is the key to getting the highest score. Columns was everywhere in the early 90s. Besides the arcade and Mega Drive versions, the game saw release on the Master System, Sega's handheld Game Gear, the PC Engine, the FM Towns, MSX, PC-88, and the PC-98. Heck, 1999 even saw a version of Columns come to the Super Nintendo. Yep, that's 2 games this episode that eventually came to Nintendo's 16-bit console. As for the pre-Sega versions of Columns, well, you can find examples of them on the internet if you look hard enough. But strangely enough, Jay Geertsen's original is almost impossible to find. By the way, you're watching what has to be the very best game of Columns I've ever played in my life. I've never been able to get good at setting up combos. Witness my amazing skills. The second ever movie licensed game for the Mega Drive is an adaptation of one of the most successful comedies of all time, Ghostbusters. But before you roll your eyes, please know that this isn't based on the generally bad Activision game from David Crane that was released in 1984. Outside of the license and a legal credit to Activision, what you get on the Mega Drive is a completely original action platform. The game takes place following the events of the movie. Money's tight, and Egon, Ray, and Peter need something big to happen in order to stay in business. Maybe that explains Winston's absence from the game? Downsizing? Anyway, you choose to play as one of the original 3, each with their own particular strengths and weaknesses. Ghost activity is starting to build in New York again, and you have your choice of 4 different jobs to take on in any order you like. The settings run the gamut of action game mainstays. You've got an ice level, underwater challenges, a fire level, and so on. And yes, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man makes an appearance as well. There are some RPG trappings in Ghostbusters too. Money earned on jobs can be used to buy better gear, both in the form of better weapons as well as passive upgrades like armor. Spending wisely is the key to making later challenges more manageable. It could be argued that there's a lot less ghost busting in this game than the original Activision title, but I'd say that's a good thing. Yeah, every now and then you can break out the traps and capture a pesky poltergeist, but for the most part the game's design definitely favors fun over authenticity. I consider Ghostbusters one of the lost gems of the pre-Sonic Genesis era. It was so easy to overlook back in the day based solely on the stigma surrounding movie license games. And it's a real shame because it's got fantastic control, wonderful level design, and seriously good graphics for the time. The caricatures of Venkman Stance and Egon work really well here. Besides, who doesn't want to play as a cartoon version of Bill Murray? Ghostbusters on the Genesis does have one other thing in common with the original Activision game. This version was co-developed by Compile, the same group that ported David Crane's original game to the Master System. This is the first appearance by Compile on the Mega Drive, but they'll go on to create a couple of key games in the system's library. And that'll do it for this episode of Generation 16. Thanks for watching. We've covered all of the Japanese releases for June 1990, but we're not done yet. This month marks one of the most important points in the history of the Genesis, not to mention the video game industry as a whole. I'll talk more about that in episode 10. See you then!